Hey, this is Ocean K with an overview of a rack extension that I call MicroTune. Now, MicroTune allows you to play microtonal music in Reason. So for those who are new to the idea of microtonal music, a microtone is a note that's in between two adjacent notes in the Western scale. So for example, C and C sharp exist in the Western scale, but there can be notes in between C and C sharp. Those in-between notes, those are called microtones. Now, Reason doesn't natively support microtones. In fact, neither does standard MIDI. But the rack extension MicroTune allows you to easily access those microtones. So let's see how it works. Now, MicroTune isn't a synth. It allows you to get microtones from any synth you already own. And the way that it does this is by using the pitch bend wheel. Basically, you program MicroTune to tell whatever synth it's hooked up to, hey, every time I play a C note, I want you to play an eighth above a C, or a half, or down 1/100th of a note, or however you want to detune the note. And it does this by having the synth play the C note and then use the pitch bend wheel to bend an eighth above or a half above or 1/100th above or whatever. Then every time you play a C note anywhere on the keyboard, you get the pitched microtone. So let's hook it up. So to program the MicroTune is easy. We've got a combinator here, and this combinator just has a single subtractor in it. There's no reason you have to use a combinator. I find the combinator easier because when you pitch bend in the combinator, it changes. The UI, the graphics actually update. So in demonstrating, it's just easier to see it. But there's no reason you can't hook up a MicroTune directly to a subtractor or some other synth. But for right now, we're going to use a combinator. So to hook up a MicroTune, on the back, we've got a gate out, a note out, and these are just standard sort of utility sequencer CVs. So we're going to do the gate out of the MicroTune into the gate in of the combinator, and the CV out into the CV in. And then we're going to set the bend out to be the pitch wheel input for the combinator. So now what happens is when I play a note, when I send it to MicroTune and I play a C, the MicroTune sends a C signal to the combinator, and then it sends the pitch bend. In this case, there's 0 pitch bend, but for C sharp, there is. And so we can see when we play C sharp, it pitches up. And then when we play a C, it pitches back down to 0. So when we play through this scale, I'm going to play just a C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, but watch what subtractor does on the pitch bend wheel. Right? So it's creating all of those microtones that are in between. So for example, when I play a D note, it plays a D, but it also pitch bends down 34 cents, right? And for E, down 68 cents, and for G, up 4 cents, and so on. Now, the way that you program the MicroTune is easy. Now, first you set the root note. This is just so you can reuse scales, and you can use a microtonal scale on whatever root note you want. So you can have a root note of C or D or whatever, right? So you just set your root note. And then you need to make sure that the bend parameter, this number matches this number. In fact, it doesn't yet. So what this does is this tells MicroTune, hey, the synth has a bend range of 1, so send out that much bend. Because if MicroTune thinks that it only has 1, but the synth has a range of 2, it'll double the amount of bend that you get, right? Which you can do some fun effects, and you can have overlapping notes when you do it that way. But for starters, we're just going to have this bend range be the same as this bend range. Steps is the number of microtones in between Western notes. So in some scales, all the notes are split up into sixth tones, or a common one is eighth tones. So right here, C sharp would be 1 up, 1 2/8, or 1/4 note, right? That's a quarter tone. in microtonal jargon, right? And you can do so. You can break it up into 6, which also means you can break it up into 2s and 3s, in 8ths, which gives you 2s and 4s, 10ths, which also gives you 5ths, and then 100ths, which gives you all the cents available. And then there's a portamento. So this portamento just determines how fast the change in the pitch bend wheel is. So you see it sort of glides in. With a high portamento, you see it's a slow bend. But with no portamento, it just jumps right to it. All right. Then the way you actually program the scale is you just turn these knobs, right? You say every time I play a D note, I want it to detune, 47 cents, or I want it to detune 1 quarter note, right? Which would be -2. All right. So you program all the notes you want that way. If you change the root note, you don't lose your scale. It's just the root note changes, right? So if your root note is E, so now all your E scale bass notes are all use that same scale. Otherwise, you can change it back to C, and now that same scale is used on all your C scale notes. There's also a pitch bend, which you can override for performance, reasons. If you're playing this live and you want to glide into a note, you can do that. And you see changing this pitch bend changes the pitch bend in the subtractor as well. That's basically it. As you see on the back, it's very simple. You can also have a gate in and note in. So for example, if you had a matrix, playing, or some other sequencer playing, that can control the MicroTune, and the MicroTune can be sort of an in-between where matrix pattern can play a microtonal scale on a synth. I've included a number of patches. So when you just open it up initially, you get sort of a handful of my favorite patches. But in the MicroTune patch folder, there are hundreds of scales. There are over 300 scales, and they're just broken up by alphabetical. But there are just a ton of scales you can use there, and they all have sort of their own flavor. So that's MicroTune, a rack extension that allows you to easily play microtonal music in Reason. I hope you like it.